What's up, current and future disc golf addicts? Today I'm going to be taking you along on a round at Seatac, just south of Seattle, located right next to the airport in Seatac, Washington. This is a 27-hole course with multiple pin positions. Unfortunately for the hole previews, I won't have the distances for you. This is more a part of my laziness than anything. The course manager, Chuck Mintz, is on top of maintaining UDisc, and by the time I had taken the screenshots for these whole previews, the pin positions had been moved from when I had a chance to play the course in June. First couple of holes, or more specifically the first two holes, are birdie opportunities, but you're looking to execute, and after this, there is a lot of maintaining to do in trying to stabilize and avoid bogeys where possible. Bringing us to hole 3, one of our very technical holes. We are playing to the A pin position. To me, this does shape up for this hyzer flip forehand. But over the years, I've tried so many different shots on this hole and never once got it to really succeed how I'd want. And so this does feel like a poke and pray, where with the history that I have, having not much success, there's not much hope in getting up for a birdie look. And so that's really one I chalk up to be a par. Hole 4, 2 pin positions. Again, we're playing to A pin position, which plays down this right fairway. Two completely different holes, where this right hole you are seeing a lot more guardian trees in the middle of the fairway that you're having to navigate. But pulling my drive a little bit off to the right, that does leave me in a really tricky spot playing down this right side. Fortunately, not being inside the bushes, but just close enough to have to try and manage them. Hole 5, we're looking at 3 different pin positions. We're playing to pin position B, which plays as this straight shot. I'm just throwing my Explorer. Not much turn or fade needed, but just leaving it a little bit low, having this long jump putt approach. Now, Seatac does play as a very long course, coming in at a par 87 and sometimes being a par 88 with the one pin position change that can make it a part difference there. But something to manage there is your expectations when it comes to the course. You have short holes that you do want to birdie, like for example hole 6 here, being the original hole 1 of the 18-hole course that existed here before the expansion, where you do want to be getting these birdie looks and you want to be converting on your putts. And so when you're missing the short holes, then the medium length holes where you're never going to be birdieing them regularly, but you can birdie if you execute. And then there are the challenging holes that you're almost chalking up to rarely ever be a birdie bar some miracle, like hole 7 here as an example. The basket is located behind this big bush you're seeing center of your screen. The bush is a lot taller and deeper than you would expect, meaning that it does take a lot of hyzer power on that forehand to get around it. And because I don't have that comfort in the pure hyzer release, I am trying to get a little bit of flex on it, but just have it drift a little bit too much, leaving myself with a long jump putter as an approach. But with these tricky holes, you do try push your luck every once in a while to see if you can land a longer putt, but that's also where Seatac can get you, because you might be starting to get frustrated at the amount of pars that you might be getting in a row, to where you feel like you're missing the opportunities. And so when you're in a decent spot on a medium difficulty hole, or even one of the difficult holes, then you really feel like you're running out of these chances at birdies, knowing that the second half of the course is going to play a little bit trickier. In general, when we're talking about the course itself, first half is majority or almost exclusively par 3s, the back half has a ton of par 4s that are all birdieable, but still can show its teeth if you're not hitting your lines. And it being such a long course and having the par 4s on the back half, that's also where fatigue comes into play, and really how focused you can be when it comes to executing your shots. Hole 9 being an example of one of the more trickier holes so far, where even at the pro level this is a really good birdie get. But then what Seatac does so well is also balance it, where moving on to hole 10, we have these more friendly holes where you have a couple different options, where I'm trying to power down on a fairway and shape a flex shot and get to the basket, but you also do have this left side gap where you can just throw a dead straight shot, doesn't matter, backhand, forehand, and get yourself in circle 1 to have that look. Hole 11, again, being a little bit on the trickier end. This time not too many obstacles to try and navigate, but it's the distance that's really the tricky part here. Coming in at roughly 380 feet. But this is also a local legend here that this has actually been aced by Kenny Clark, one of our local pros who has a massive forehand. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was all air too, making it even crazier to picture how that's even possible. Moving on to hole 12. Hole 12 is one of a couple holes at Seatac to where you have these low ceilings where they shape up surprisingly nice for these rollers that you wouldn't necessarily expect. But being in the woods, that does make them a lot more technical and very specific as far as the angle and shape that you want the disc to roll in, to where this one I wanted to cut it a little left and then come back towards the basket. Pulling it off to the right, struggling, but actually managing to save my par with a miracle throw-in. I'm extremely lucky to walk away there with no damage on the scorecard. Next hole, another one that's really friendly for that roller play. Only real danger is if you do go left, you're going to be struggling a lot more, but not as much a concern with that roller play that I'm trying to go with. There is some room out to the right for a backhand flex shot, but to me it does seem like it's a little more luck than intentionally picking a gap and trying to hit that. Hole 14 doesn't look like it on camera, but it is downhill. There's this one center gap where you're seeing the basket through. If you actually get to the gap, and even if you hit the ground there, because it does slope off a little bit towards the basket, you'll see discs slide really nicely towards it, and they just filter, giving yourself a look. So it's really all about just hitting that gap and not necessarily having to worry as much as getting the disc all the way to the basket in the air. Hole 15, we're looking at a slightly easier hole, but this left to right slope does play a little bit of a mental game with you, and these initial bushes just off the tee, so you want to give it a little bit of height, but the hole doesn't shape up for much room to go left or right. It really is throw what you can straight and try to give yourself a birdie look, and that's one of the few that does feel like a missed opportunity if you don't. Hole 16 is one of the holes where I'm not sure I have ever seen a birdie. As far as local legend goes, there's big sidearm flex lines above the trees that might give you a look, but the shape of the hole being a par 3 that's just under 300 feet, but 90 degree if not more dogleg left, makes it really hard to even get within circle 2 off a drive, leaving you sometimes trying to get a little bit desperate and trying to cheat your way, see if you can get a really long look, but making it extremely difficult to do so. Hole 17 is our first par 4 at Seatac, and with the back 9 being a lot more par 4 heavy than the front 9, this is where you're starting to feel possibly a little bit of that frustration, getting some pars, bogeys, depending on how well you're managing the course. But this is where you have an opportunity to score, but you still have to get into position and play and focus on all your shots. There is no easy tee shot or easy second shot that would count for an easy birdie. Both are equally technical, and you're going to have to earn it every step of the way. Now with these par 4s, we do have a couple par 3s, longer par 3s that are filtered in through the second half of the course. Hole 18 being a perfect example of that. Really technical, long turnover with that low ceiling where I just leaked my drive a little bit high, nicking the branches, but fortunately saving my par there. Hole 19, you do have a couple of different options. The only legitimate gap that I see is if you really drift out far further right than you can see on the screen, the fairway does open up. But to find your way off to the right side of the fairway, it does require a little bit more luck, and I wouldn't know which gap you'd intentionally try to hit to get there. But if you do find your way over there, where I am now after my second shot with the unforced error, there is much clearer lines towards the basket. But again, with these fairway trees, especially on hole 19, it's a real challenge if you're finding those to get yourself up and try score well. Hole 20, a little bit shorter par 4. I believe this one should be just under 500 feet. You're not quite seeing eagle looks for pros, but this little elevated step up that you're seeing on your screen, a fantastic drive would be up at this hill, but being a little bit on the shorter end, you really don't have to push it there. You really just want to be in good position for that second shot. Still relatively specific as far as the landing zone, but this is one of the few where that initial tee shot doesn't feel as specific as the second shot, and you do have a little bit more leeway there if you're not spot on with your landing zones. Hole 21, resembling hole 19 in shape, but this time we're not seeing many fairway trees. Off the tee you do have this one to navigate, and then about halfway down you have one more tree that's center cut. Apart from these, really chop the hole up in two. Whatever you can throw straight for your first shot, and then your second shot, and then you should be looking for a birdie putt. I actually end up getting really lucky, even though I did nick these branches off to the right on that bushy tree. I found myself just outside circle 1 with a long birdie look. Unfortunately missing my actual putt, but player B though, cashing in those, and so that's also a little bit of that frustration there setting in. Moving on to the next hole, 22. Big turnover off the tee, and then approaching the basket. You have two fairways to choose from, where there's this high sidearm approach to the green where the apple trees are, but there is also this little bit more technical right side backhand gap, and I've always preferred this left side forehand hyzer. At least try to get yourself up to the green to give yourself a putt, and carding a birdie on that par 4. Hole 23, although the fairway itself does shape up to be a really tricky hole, what people have actually found is in the winters it's more open than in the summers, but there is this sneaky forehand hyzer straight left of the tee that people can actually navigate and land there to where my second shot was. And so if you have the power to do that and clear the big bushes, it's a massive help on this hole, but it is a really tricky pro level shot to execute. And so with the AMs, you're mostly stuck trying to navigate down the center of the fairway and normally trying to bite off a little bit more than you should. And that's where that trouble really comes in. Hole 24, really tricky, if not one of the hardest scoring holes on the course. Certainly coming in at over par, being only a par 3. It requires all the power to get there, where the only real line is this high backhand flex shot over the trees. And even though the hole doesn't play the longest, when you're having to throw it over the trees, it adds for lots of room for error. And this is often where you're also seeing a little bit of that desperation, like you saw there, trying to give it a little bit of a bid on that approach to try get your par. And that 3, even though it is a par on the scorecard, almost feels like a birdie every time. Now, last 3 holes are a lot more friendly than what we've just been experiencing, and these are really your last 3 opportunities to grab some birdies. Hole 25, not necessarily an easy birdie, still very technical, but assuming you navigate that initial gap where I just hit that tree crossing the fairway, you do actually have a pretty decent chance where the shots do filter towards this bowl where the basket is located. 26, shorter hole than you would think. Initial half of the fairway is flat, but slopes significantly down, and you see that shots are actually filtering a lot further than what you would expect, to where I thought my shot was going to be short of the basket, but almost actually went OB long, but still luckily staying in bounds and then converting that putt. Hole 27, being in the A pin position, is just a soft putter hyzer here. Perfect ace run hole. Try to finish your round off in a nice way, walk off the course. At the very least, this should be one that your intermediate to advanced players, and certainly pros, are looking to get your birdie on to walk off, but finishing there with an unforced error, leaving me at +2 at Seatac. If you enjoyed what you saw, don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.